How you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
You excited about the first North Conway podcast?
Pumped.
Parent cast. Okay, all right. So let's go over the reasons why we're making this podcast. And the reason we came up with it is because Lifeway came out with some research and found out during the month of March and April, that's when they did the research, because that's when everything was shut down, that they found out 70% of church-going parents did not have biblical or gospel conversations with their kids at the house. There's several reasons for that. Some didn't know where to start. Some didn't feel like they could answer all the questions that some kids have, which kids do ask some tough questions, no doubt, because we ourselves ask tough questions. And some felt like they were hypocrites for trying to disciple the kids at the house because their kids saw them at their weakest moments, which that is understandable. So, why did we create this podcast?
Well, we just wanted to let parents know that they are not alone in this, that there are resources available, and just to encourage parents as they go, just to be there for their children and to help disciple them.
Yeah, and so this is not a how to parent podcast, right? This is not that, because you have a 1.5, or is she almost 2 now?
She's 18 months, yeah.
18 months, and my oldest is 2 and 3.5 months, maybe 4 months by the time we listen to this, or it goes out. So we have no idea how to parent. We're learning it. But how long have you been in ministry?
About 6 years.
6 years. That's full-time ministry, not just helping out in ministry, right? Okay. What did you do as summer jobs? Did you do like a summer job in a ministry or anything?
Yeah, I served as director of family life ministries at a church before coming to North Conway. Awesome.
So, so I've been in ministry about 6 or 7 years as well, and as full-time, and then other ministries before that. So we know how to disciple kids, not that we're perfect at it, but we want to get some practical tips in how to disciple kids at the house. So for our listeners and our viewers on YouTube, we know that you want to know something about us because we like to trust people. In order to trust people, we want to know about them. So let's give some of our faith background. Let's start with you, Chery.
Okay, so I grew up in church, and church was a priority in my home growing up. And if the doors were open at church, we were there, and oftentimes we would go and pick up a carload of children on the way, and we just were there every time. It was important to my family, and my parents just made sure we were there every time the doors were open. So, backstory a little bit, I'd always heard about Jesus growing up. I heard it from church family, I heard it in my family, and I consider to have like on-the-job training as far as walk with the Lord went. My parents showed me what it meant in their lives. They lived it, they modeled it, and they also used moments, teachable moments when I messed up or maybe I did something good. They just used all of those moments, and they explained how maybe I could have done this better or could have lived for the Lord a little bit better in this way. So they just used moments like that. So I went to church camp. Since I was growing up in church, I went to camps and conferences all the time. And at age 14, I gave my life to the Lord at CentriKid summer camp. And as I went to other camps and conferences, I realized that, well, a lot of times they would have these people come in and tell their stories, and these stories were so sometimes like dramatic changes in their lives from before they knew the Lord to after they knew the Lord. And I remember getting almost frustrated that I didn't have this really cool story to share about my salvation story. So I just really took that to the Lord, and He revealed to me Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verses 4 through 9, and specifically verse 7 that says, "You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." And that verse is what God used to show me that my salvation story was beautiful, even though there weren't these huge dramatic changes in my life from before I got saved after. Now, obviously, the Holy Spirit was definitely working in me after my salvation at age 14, and I felt him pulling at my heart, and I felt changes. There were no doubt there were changes, but as far as going to church and reading my Bible, those habits were already a part of my life. So I am thankful that he revealed that verse to me and showed me that he used my parents to develop my relationship and to take me further and deeper than I could have ever gone because of the way they lived and modeled, and they were obedient to the Lord to diligently teach those things to me and implant them in my life, and I am thankful for that. And if we fast forward to when I got to college, and I was spending my first weekend in my dorm room in a new town, and it was a Saturday night, and I had the opportunity to decide if I was going to church or not. Whereas before in my life, it was kind of expected. We know we're going to set the alarm, set the clothes out, and we're going to go. That night, I remember thinking, am I going to go to church in the morning? So I ended up deciding to go, and I did what I knew. I set my alarm, I laid my clothes out, and me and a couple friends went to church in a new town, which is hard to do. But I had the background of it to help me through that, and the help of the Lord to find a good church and get involved. And that became a huge part of my salvation story and the development of my faith and my walk with the Lord. So I am thankful to my parents that they instilled in me, go to church, make your faith the priority, and just continue to grow in the Lord. No matter where you are and no matter how old you get, it is just a part of life, and just do it as you go, anytime. How about you, Will? What's your story?
Yeah, I grew up in church as well. Grew up in Rock Hill. I went to First Baptist Rock Hill, and I became a Christian when I was first or second grade. I can't remember the moment. And I know that sounds kind of crazy because a lot of people say, I remember the day I became a Christian, when it came right there. And I think it's all right to have a testimony like you're talking about, where we grew up in church. And recently I read the book from J.D. Greear, Quit Asking Jesus Into Your Heart, which doesn't mean don't ever ask, but he talked about how he went to a bunch of Christian camps and all this other stuff, and he got baptized like 7 times because he couldn't remember the exact moment, and he always felt like he had to rededicate his life every time he went to a camp or something. But he talked about how there's a time where you become a Christian if you make that decision, and then if you do it young, there's going to be a gradual becoming more like Christ. He sanctifies you as you continue to mature in Him, and that's kind of what's happened to me. And there's a time in my life in college where it's about a year and a half where I basically tried to run away from God, and the funny thing is I still kept going to church, but inside I was like really full of hate. I just didn't understand God's grace and mercy. I was very much a Pharisee, if you will. People aren't doing this, so why should I believe that? And things like that. But luckily, I had friends around me who continued to make sure I went to church, and even during that tough time. But eventually, there was a point where my parents said, "Hey, if you don't get your life together, you're going to be on your own." I didn't know what that meant at the time, and I still don't know exactly whether I was going to be kicked out of the house and all kinds of things. So for about an hour or so, I prayed in my room, say, "God, help me because I need you," because I tried to do it my own way. And he showed me mercy and grace, and he put people around me in every classroom that I had that particular semester, and they kept me accountable in academics, but more importantly, spiritually. So that was really good, and I'm starting to understand His grace and mercy even more, because I didn't know what it meant. I mean, I knew the facts about Jesus. I knew what He did for us. I knew I needed God, but I didn't really understand the grace and mercy as much as I do now, and I don't take that for granted. And the way my parents discipled me growing up the way they did it was, till about 5, we would have family devotions, I think like every Sunday night. And then after 5, it just kind of quit happening. I don't know why. But they made sure I was at church. And when I started driving, I went to church. It just was expected. And so But they would still do discipleship in intentional ways and informal ways, like just having conversations in the car, how making decisions that are coming up, and basing it around how the gospel is related to that. I remember one time there was a girl that I think she had some kind of interest in me in the neighborhood, and my mom had the conversation like, does this girl go to church? Do you know if she goes to church, what church does she go to? And well, it turns out the girl started coming to church a little bit because her friend went to my church, and that she come once around, but she wasn't really a person that was dedicated to the Lord and His people. And so I'm still friends with not at the time anymore, obviously, but still remain friends with that person until I graduated from high school. But I remember that conversation with my mom, and she made sure that I thought about if this is a girl that I should date. And that's just one example of informal but intentional discipleship. But now that we have kids, I'm starting to be a little more intentional. But right now we're just having Bible stories. I don't know about you, but that's what I do with Julia Rose, a little rhyming Bible. She likes hearing about the big giant and the giant fish and the bush and Jesus on the cross. So we want to give our listeners and viewers just 2 pieces of advice in discipling your kids at home. So why don't we start with you, Chery?
Okay, so the first thing that I would say is just to pray. Pray for your walk with the Lord. Pray for your children and their relationship with the Lord. Pray for moments to teach them. Pray for their minds as they hear what you say. And then pray for you as you talk with them and be intentional about that discipleship. And realizing that the Holy Spirit will meet you there. He will join you along, and He will help you as you talk to them and provide answers and questions that need to go, or that you need to look at further with your children, and just help you in every sense of that. So pray. The second thing I would say is just take advantage of teachable moments. If they mess up, talk them through it. If they make a good decision, explain how that was honoring to the Lord. Whatever it is, just use that moment as a teachable moment, and realize that it might be kind of awkward at first, and that's okay. Just keep going, and it will get easier every day.
My two pieces of advice is just start. If you're not doing it now, just start. And you might be thinking, well, where do I start? I don't know. You need to pray about that, as Chery says. But if you don't start, you won't ever disciple. Baseball term is you never swing the bat. If you never swing the bat, you definitely won't hit the ball. So go for it. During COVID, when everything was shut down, I started playing guitar. That's something I always wanted to do, and I was scared to do it because I just felt like I couldn't do it. It's one of those things. Luckily, I got some friends. Corey has taught me a little bit, and just got a guitar and started playing. But guess what? I'm a lot better than I was when I first started. I couldn't even hit the string right. So if you just start having it. And I remember a movie we watched recently was Like Arrows. And it's a really good movie, Christian movie. But it had this family who kind of had a rough start to their marriage. They got married for the wrong reasons, but they stayed married in that movie. I think they had 3 kids, I believe. And the first one moved off to college, and then their middle one, who was a daughter, had some trouble, and they realized the reason is because they were not doing what the Lord had called them to do. So they started going to church. They went to a parents' conference, and they started having discipleship at the home. And it was really cool. They talked about it showed the awkwardness of first doing a devotion. And they said, look, this week we're not the best at this. We don't know everything, but God knows what we need to know. And so He's given us His word. So they started doing it. And now that movie had a great message, had a great ending story. I can't guarantee you that it's going to be as great ending as that, but if you just start, that's all you need to do right now. If you haven't, just start praying, start doing it, start having discipleship. which is just open the Bible. It could be open the Bible and say, hey, let's memorize this verse this week, and just pray about it and talk to each other about the verse. And then the other thing is, this is a really big one too, is remember that God has given us all we need to do in discipleship, in knowing Him. And 2 Peter 1:3 pretty much says that, and when he says, His divine power has given us everything we need for godly life through our knowledge of Him who called us by His own glory and goodness. So He's given us His Word. He's given us His Holy Spirit. He's given us Jesus. He's given Himself. So trust Him and just start doing it. Pray and and just have those conversations. Don't be afraid. All right, so that's the first episode of the North Conway Parent Cast. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for another episode. Peace out.